Maya Cruz looked like just another crop duster in faded jeans and work boots. Passengers on Flight 147 dismissed her as simple farm folk, but at 35,000 feet, when catastrophic system failures threatened 147 lives, the quiet woman revealed she was Major Viper Cruz, legendary F-35 Lightning stealth fighter pilot whose combat skills would save them all. Before you watch the full story, comment below, Rom, which country are you watching from? Don't forget to subscribe. The morning sun cast long shadows across Cedar Falls Regional Airport in Iowa. It was 6:30 a.m. on Tuesday, October 15th, and the small airport was just coming to life. The control tower had opened an hour earlier, and ground crews were preparing the day's first departures. At the large windows overlooking the tarmac, Maya Cruz stood watching the United Airlines Boeing 737-800 being fueled for the 8:15 a.m. flight to Chicago O'Hare. Her weathered leather jacket hung loose over a faded Iowa State University t-shirt. Work boots, worn jeans, and calloused hands told the story of someone who worked outdoors for a living. At 35, Maya had the quiet confidence of someone comfortable in her own skin. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she carried only a small canvas duffel bag, the kind crop dusters used for overnight trips when flying to distant farms. Flight 147 to Chicago O'Hare. Now boarding all passengers, announced the gate agent over the intercom. Maya joined the line of business travelers, families, and college students. She moved with an economy of motion that suggested physical fitness, but nothing that would make anyone look twice. Behind her in line, Robert Bob Patterson adjusted his expensive tie and checked his Rolex. At 52, Bob was a successful insurance executive from Des Moines, traveling to Chicago for a conference. He noticed Maya's rural appearance and immediately categorized her as local farm folk. First time flying to the big city, Bob asked with what he thought was kindness, but came across as condescension. Maya glanced back at him. "No, sir, just heading to Chicago for the day. Business or pleasure?" Bob persisted. "Let me guess, you're one of those crop duster pilots, right? Flying those little yellow planes over the cornfields." "I fly agricultural aircraft," Maya confirmed quietly. Bob smiled broadly. "I knew it. My brother-in-law does the same thing down in Missouri. Sprays pesticides, fertilizer applications. He's always telling me how simple the flying is. Just straight and level. Nothing complicated like what these commercial airline pilots do." Maya nodded politely and said nothing. In front of them, college student Lisa Chan was heading back to Northwestern University after a long weekend visiting her boyfriend at Iowa State. She overheard the conversation and turned around with interest. "That must be so different from flying on big planes like this," Lisa said to Maya. "I mean, going from tiny crop dusting planes to a huge Boeing 737. The pilots here probably have thousands of hours of training, way more complex than farm flying, right?" "The principles are the same," Maya replied diplomatically. Bob laughed. "Oh, come on. It's not even close. These airline pilots go through years of training. Flight simulators, instrument ratings, dealing with air traffic control, weather systems, emergency procedures. Your little crop dusting is probably just visual flying around familiar fields. No offense. But it's like comparing a bicycle to a Formula One race car." Lisa nodded enthusiastically. "Exactly. Plus all the technology on these big jets, autopilots, navigation computers, radar systems. I bet crop dusters barely have radios." Maya almost smiled at that comment, but instead just said, "Every aircraft has its challenges." The line moved forward and they presented their boarding passes. Maya was in seat 1 for B, middle seat in economy class. Bob had managed to snag one for A by the window, while Lisa was across the aisle in 14C. As they settled into their seats, Bob continued his patronizing conversation. "So, what got you into crop dusting?" "Family business." "Did your dad teach you to fly?" "I learned to fly in the service," Maya said briefly. "Oh, the military?" Bob laughed out loud. "Let me guess. Transport pilot. Flying cargo around." Maya shook her head. "Fighter pilot." Bob was still chuckling. "Fighter pilot. Come on now. No offense, but women don't fly fighters. Maybe you were a cargo pilot or flew some transport missions." Maya's jaw tightened slightly, but she kept her voice level. "I flew F-35 Lightning stealth fighters. F-35s. Bob was still chuckling. "Those are the most advanced fighter jets in the world. They only let the absolute elite pilots fly those Top Gun stuff. No way they let crop dusters." He trailed off as he saw Maya's expression. There was something in her eyes, a hardness that hadn't been there before. I mean, Bob backpedaled awkwardly. I'm sure you did important work in the military. Support roles are crucial, too. Maya turned to look out the small window. Support roles, she murmured. Lisa leaned over from across the aisle. Don't mind him. I think it's cool that you served. What was your job in the Air Force? I was a pilot, Maya said simply. That's awesome. What kind of planes? Transport, tankers. Maya closed her eyes. Let's just say I'm not in the military anymore. The conversation was interrupted by the flight attendants beginning their safety demonstration. Maya watched with the trained eye of someone who had been through countless briefings, noting emergency exits, oxygen mask locations, and life vest positions. Captain Michael Torres, a 15-year veteran of United Airlines, was completing his pre-flight checklist in the cockpit alongside First Officer Jennifer Walsh, who had been flying commercial jets for 8 years. Weather looks good to Chicago, Torres announced over the intercom. Flight time today should be about 1 hour and 45 minutes. We're currently third in line for takeoff, so we should be airborne in about 10 minutes. Maya automatically checked her watch. 8:20 a.m. The flight was running slightly behind schedule. As the Boeing 737 taxied toward runway 22, Maya's mind wandered back to another October morning 7 years ago. She had been Captain Maya Cruz then, call sign Viper, preparing for a dawn patrol over hostile territory in her F-35s Lightning II. The memories came flooding back despite her efforts to suppress them. The weight of the fighter jet responding to her every command, the heads-up display showing threat indicators, the radio chatter of her wingman, Blade 2, confirming weapon systems were armed and ready. Viper, this is Overlord. You are cleared for Operation Nightfall. Good hunting, Overlord. Viper copies. Flight is Winchester and ready. That had been her last combat mission. 3 enemy fighters destroyed in 12 minutes of aerial combat that military historians would later call one of the most decisive air-to-air engagements of the 21st century. And now she was sitting in the middle seat of a commercial airliner, listening to insurance executives explain why women couldn't be fighter pilots. Ladies and gentlemen, from the flight deck, this is your captain speaking. We've been cleared for takeoff. Flight attendants, please prepare for departure. The Boeing 737's twin CFM56 engines spooled up to full power. Maya felt the familiar sensation of acceleration and liftoff, no matter what aircraft she was in. That moment never got old. Bob was gripping his armrest tightly. I hate this part, he muttered. Always makes me nervous when we first take off. Maya glanced at him with amusement. This man, who had just spent 20 minutes explaining how difficult and dangerous commercial aviation was terrified of a routine takeoff. It's perfectly safe, Maya assured him. These pilots know what they're doing. I know. It's just we're trusting our lives to people we've never met. At least with your crop dusting, you're in control of your own plane. If he only knew, Maya thought. She had trusted her life to wingmen she'd known for years, flying into combat zones where surface-to-air missiles and enemy fighters were actively trying to kill her. A commercial takeoff from Cedar Falls was about as dangerous as brushing her teeth. 30 minutes into the flight, as they cruised at 35,000 feet over Illinois farmland, Maya was beginning to relax. Maybe she could get through this flight without any drama. Maybe she could just be Maya the crop duster for 2 more hours. That's when everything went wrong. The first indication of trouble was a muffled bang from somewhere in the aircraft, followed immediately by a violent shudder that threw several passengers against their seatbelts. What the hell was that? Bob shouted, his face going pale. Before anyone could answer, the aircraft lurched to the right and the oxygen mask dropped from the ceiling panels. Passengers screamed. A baby started crying. Someone in the back was shouting, "We're going to crash." Captain Torres' voice came over the intercom, trying to maintain calm. Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing some technical difficulties. Please remain in your seats and put on your oxygen masks immediately. Flight attendants, please take your seats. Maya had her oxygen mask on before most passengers even realized what was happening. Her trained reflexes kicked in automatically. She quickly assessed the situation. Loss of cabin. Pressure indicated a breach in the hull or failure of pressurization systems. The aircraft's behavior suggested they were also dealing with flight control problems. This wasn't just technical difficulties. This was a cascade failure. Multiple systems going down simultaneously. Bob was fumbling with his oxygen mask, panic written across his face. This isn't supposed to happen. These big planes are safe. They have backups for everything. Lisa was crying across the aisle. unable to get her mask properly positioned. Maya reached over and helped her, speaking in a calm, authoritative voice that cut through the chaos. Listen to me. Breathe normally. The mask is working. You're going to be fine. Lisa looked at Maya with terror in her eyes. How can you be so calm? We're going to die. No, we're not, Maya said with absolute certainty. The pilots are trained for this. The aircraft can handle it. But even as she said it, Maya's experience there was picking up sounds that worried her. The engines weren't running smoothly. There were vibrations in the airframe that shouldn't be there, and the aircraft was in a slight but persistent dive that the pilots couldn't seem to correct. Another violent shudder rocked the plane. This time the lights flickered and several overhead bins popped open, spilling luggage into the aisles. Maya unbuckled her seat belt and stood up. "Ma'am," called flight attendant Jenny Morrison, struggling to maintain her balance in the aisle. "Please remain seated. We're in an emergency situation." "I know we are," Maya replied, moving toward the front of the aircraft with the sure-footed balance of someone who had walked on pitching ship decks and aircraft carrier flight decks. "I need to speak with the pilots. I'm sorry, but passengers cannot access the flight deck during—" "I'm not just a passenger," Maya interrupted, her voice carrying an authority that made Jenny stop mid-sentence. "I'm a pilot, and right now the flight crew needs all the help they can get." Bob called out from his seat. "She's just a crop duster. She can't help with something like this." Maya ignored him and continued toward the cockpit. She knocked firmly on the reinforced door. "Captain, this is Major Maya Cruz. I'm a military pilot, and I need to assist." "Go away," came the muffled reply from Captain Torres. "We're dealing with an emergency." Maya took a deep breath. She hadn't used her call sign in 3 years, but lives were at stake now. "Captain, this is Major Maya Cruz. Call sign Viper. I repeat, call sign Viper. You need to open this door now." There was silence from the cockpit. Then Maya heard First Officer Walsh's voice. Did she say Viper? More muffled conversation than the sound of locks disengaging. The cockpit door opened and Captain Torres looked out. His face was pale with stress, sweat beading on his forehead. "Did you say call sign Viper?" he asked quietly. Maya nodded. "I did." Torres stared at her for a long moment, then stepped back. "Come in." Maya entered the cockpit and immediately understood why the commercial pilots were struggling. The instrument panel looked like a Christmas tree of warning lights. Master caution alarms were blaring. The aircraft was bucking against the controls like a wild horse. "Holy Mother of God," whispered First Officer Walsh, staring at Maya. "You're the Viper, the F-35 pilot from the Syria mission. Right now, I'm the pilot who's going to help you save this aircraft," Maya said, sliding into the jump seat behind them. "What's your status?" Captain Torres was fighting the controls, muscle straining. "We've lost hydraulic system A completely. System B is failing. Engine number 2 is showing compressor stalls. Flight management computer is giving us conflicting data. We're losing altitude and I can't arrest the descent rate." Maya's eyes swept across the instrument panel, her fighter pilot training analyzing multiple data streams simultaneously. She saw the problem immediately. "You've got a cascade failure triggered by the hydraulic loss," she said calmly. "The flight management system is trying to compensate for control surface positions it can't verify. Engine 2 isn't actually failing. It's being starved by throttle commands from a computer that doesn't know what's real anymore. Can you fix it?" First Officer Walsh asked desperately. Maya was already reaching for controls. "Switch to manual reversion on the primary flight controls. Disconnect the autopilot and auto throttles. Go full manual." "But the checklist says." "The checklist wasn't written for this specific failure combination." Maya cut him off. "I've seen this before in combat when battle damage caused multiple system failures. Trust your basic instruments. Ignore the warnings. Fly the airplane, not the computers." Captain Torres hesitated for a moment, then began following Maya's instructions. The violent shaking began to decrease as the aircraft responded to manual control inputs instead of conflicting computer commands. "Good," Maya said. "Now restart engine to using the auxiliary power unit. The engine is fine. The computer just thinks it's failed." First Officer Walsh initiated the restart procedure. Engine spooled back up to normal operation. "How did you know that would work?" Torres asked in amazement. "Because I've had every system on an F-35 Lightning to fail simultaneously while dodging surface-to-air missiles over Syria," Maya replied matter-of-factly. "When you're flying at Mach 1.8 and someone's shooting at you, you learn to distinguish between actual failures and system confusion very quickly. The aircraft was now flying much more smoothly. Though they were still dealing with limited hydraulic systems and degraded flight controls, Maya keyed the radio. Chicago Center, United 1247. We have a former military aviator assisting the crew, requesting immediate priority handling for emergency landing at nearest suitable airport. United 1247, Chicago Center. Roger. Understand you have additional pilot assistance. State the nature of your emergency and souls on board. Chicago Center, United 1247 Heavy. We have experienced multiple system failures including hydraulic systems and flight management computers. We have 147 souls on board and are declaring an emergency. We need vectors to the nearest airport with emergency equipment standing by. United 1247, turn left heading 075. O'Hare International is 85 miles northeast. Emergency equipment will be standing by. Can you maintain current altitude? Maya looked at the instruments. We can maintain altitude with manual control, but we'll need to make a straightened approach. No holding patterns or extended vectors. Roger. United 1247, you're cleared direct O'Hare. Descend and maintain. Flight level 240. As Maya coordinated with air traffic control, she noticed both commercial pilots staring at her with expressions of awe and disbelief. You really are her, aren't you? Captain Torres said quietly. Viper, the pilot who single-handedly won the Battle of Aleppo. Maya didn't take her eyes off the instruments. That's classified information. Captain, the Air Force released some details last year. 3 enemy fighters destroyed in one engagement. A surface-to-air missile site eliminated. You saved an entire Marine unit that was pinned down. I did my job, Maya said simply. Your job. First Officer Walsh shook her head in disbelief. Ma'am, you're a legend. Every military pilot knows about call sign Viper. They teach your tactics at Top Gun School. They teach improved versions of my tactics. Maya corrected. The enemy adapts. That's insane, Torres said. You just demonstrated exactly why we need pilots like you. No computer could have diagnosed this problem and solved it so quickly. Try explaining that to a congressman who's never been in an airplane, Maya replied bitterly. The radio crackled with a new voice. United 1247. This is Razor Flight of 2 F-35 Lightning to South. We've been scrambled to escort you to O'Hare. How can we assist? Captain Torres reached for the radio, but Maya stopped him. Let me handle this. She keyed the MiG. Razor Flight. This is call sign Viper aboard United 1247. Complete silence on the radio. Then, say again. United 1247. Did you say Viper? Razor Flight. This is Major Maya Cruz. Call sign Viper. I'm aboard United 1247 assisting with emergency procedures. The radio erupted with excited chatter from the F-35 pilots. Holy, it's actually Viper. The Viper from the 355th Fighter Squadron. Man, this is Razor One, Lieutenant Colonel Johnson. It's an incredible honor. Ma'am, the entire fighter community knows your record. Maya smiled for the first time since the emergency began. Thank you, Razor One. Right now, I need you to coordinate with O'Hare Tower. We're coming in with degraded flight controls and limited hydraulics. Make sure the runway is clear and emergency equipment is in position. Absolutely. MAM, consider it done. Razor Flight will clear the airspace and coordinate emergency response. Through the cockpit windows, Maya could see the 2 F-35 Lightning the stealth fighters taking position on either side of the airliner. Her heart ached as she watched them. Those sleek, deadly aircraft represented everything she had trained for, everything she had excelled at, everything she had lost. Why did you really leave the Air Force? First Officer Walsh asked. Quietly, Maya watched the F-35s maintaining perfect formation alongside them. Politics. After the Syrian mission, I became divisible. Too much media attention. The Pentagon didn't want a female pilot getting all the glory. Then the budget cuts came and they used it as an excuse to force out experienced pilots they considered problematic. Captain Torres was incredulous. You're probably the finest combat pilot of your generation. I was also a woman who made some male egos uncomfortable, Maya said flatly, and I had opinions about tactics and strategy. That didn't align with the current military doctrine. So when it came time to cut personnel, my name was at the top of the list. The approach to O'Hare was tense but controlled. Maya walked the crew through every step, her voice calm and professional. Even as they dealt with multiple system failures, United 1247, O'Hare Tower. Runway 10 right is clear. Emergency equipment is in position. Wind is 090 at 8 knots. You're cleared to land. O'Hare Tower. United 1247. We're on final approach. Be advised we may need maximum runway length due to control difficulties. Maya helped Captain Torres manage the approach. The aircraft was sluggish and required constant correction, but her fighter pilot experience allowed her to anticipate problems before they developed. Airspeed is good, she called out. Watch your sink rate there. Bring the nose up slightly. Good. The Boeing 737 touched down hard, but safely on runway 10 right. Emergency vehicles raced alongside as they rolled out, prepared for the worst. In the cabin, passengers erupted in cheers and applause. Many were crying with relief. The terrifying hour-long emergency was over. Maya unbuckled from the jump seat and stood up. Outstanding flying. Gentlemen, you handled a very difficult situation with skill and professionalism. Captain Torres grabbed her hand. Major Cruz, Maya, we couldn't have done this without you. You saved 147 lives today. We all did our jobs, Maya replied. That's what professionals do. But as she headed toward the cabin, both pilots called out to her. Major, First Officer Walsh said, I don't care what the politicians in Washington think. You belong in a cockpit. The Air Force made a huge mistake letting you go. Maya paused at the cockpit door. The Air Force will survive without me. They always do. She entered the main cabin to find passengers still celebrating their safe landing. Flight Attendant Jenny Morrison approached her with tears in her eyes. Ma'am, I don't know what you did up there, but Captain Torres just announced over the intercom that you saved the flight. I'm so sorry I tried to make you sit down earlier. You were doing your job, Maya assured her. No apology necessary. Bob Patterson, the insurance executive who had spent the boarding process explaining why women couldn't be fighter pilots, was sitting in his seat looking pale and shaken. When he saw Maya approaching, he stood up awkwardly. I owe you an apology, he stammered. In my life, the captain just told us who you really are. I said such stupid, ignorant things. Maya looked at him calmly. Mr. Patterson, you made assumptions based on appearances. We all do that sometimes, but I was so wrong. So incredibly wrong. You really are a fighter pilot, an F-35 pilot, and you just saved all of us. I was a fighter pilot. Maya corrected. Now I dust crops. Both are honest work. Lisa Chen, the college student, was staring at Maya with a mixture of awe and embarrassment. I can't believe we spent the whole boarding process talking about how simple crop dusting was compared to real flying. You must have thought we were such idiots. I thought you were making conversation, Maya said diplomatically. Most people don't know much about agricultural aviation or military flying. There's no reason you should. But F-35s, Lisa shook her head in disbelief. Those are the most advanced fighters in the world, and you flew combat missions. Actual combat? Maya nodded briefly. I did my service. Now I do something else. As passengers filed off the aircraft at O'Hare, each one stopped to thank Maya. Some shook her hand. Others were too emotional to speak. A few wanted to take selfies, which she politely declined. Ma'am, said an elderly man who had been sitting near the back, my grandson is a Navy pilot. He's going to flip when I tell him I flew with the legendary Viper. Maya smiled. Tell him to fly safe and always bring his crew home. That's what matters. Finally, the aircraft was empty except for Maya and the crew. Captain Torres and First Officer Walsh were completing their post-flight checklist, but they stopped when Maya approached. Major, Torres said, I meant what I said earlier. Have you considered returning to aviation? The airlines are desperate for experienced pilots. With your background and what you demonstrated today, Maya shook her head. Captain, I appreciate the offer, but I'm done with that world. I found peace in agricultural flying. Dusting crops, First Officer Walsh asked incredulously. After flying the most advanced fighters ever built. After proving today that you have skills no simulator can teach, there's something to be said for flying alone over quiet farmland, Maya replied. No one shoots at you. No politics, no egos, just you, the aircraft, and the sky. She picked up her canvas duffel bag. Besides, farmers need their crops protected just like Marines need air support. Different mission, same principles. as Maya walked toward the jetway. Captain Torres called out one last time, "Major, what you did today, that was extraordinary. You didn't just save 147 lives. You reminded us what it means to be a pilot." Maya paused at the aircraft door. "Captain, for 1 hour today, I got to be Viper again." That was enough. Outside on the ramp, the 2 F-35 pilots who had escorted them were waiting by their aircraft. They came to attention as Maya approached. "Ma'am," said Razor One, "Lieutenant Colonel Johnson, it's an honor to finally meet you in person. We've studied your Syrian mission in our tactical training courses." Maya looked at the 2 young pilots. They reminded her of herself 15 years earlier, confident, eager, ready to take on the world. "How long have you been flying F-35s?" she asked. "3 years, ma'am," replied Razor Two, a young captain who looked barely old enough to drive. "The F-35 is an incredible aircraft, more capable than anything I flew early in my career. But remember, all the technology in the world can't replace good judgment and situational awareness." "Yes, Mom," both pilots replied, and remember, Maya added with a slight smile, "the most advanced weapon system is still just a tool. What matters is the pilot using it." The F-35 pilots saluted as Maya walked away toward the terminal. She could hear them talking excitedly behind her. "Can you believe we just met Viper? Wait until the squadron hears about this. Did you see how calm she was, even dealing with a commercial emergency inside O'Hara's massive Terminal 1? Maya found a quiet coffee shop and ordered a black coffee. She pulled out her phone and called her employer back in Iowa. "Hello, Jim. It's Maya. Yeah, the flight was delayed. Equipment problems. No, nothing serious. Listen, I should be back tomorrow afternoon. Did the weather hold for the Henderson fields? Good. I'll finish the corn application first thing Thursday morning." As she talked about pesticide schedules and weather patterns, business travelers rushed past her table without a second glance. She was invisible again, just another rural pilot discussing farm work. But on the television above the bar, CNN was running a breaking news story. Emergency landing at O'Hare Airport this morning was successfully completed with assistance from a passenger who turned out to be a decorated military pilot. Sources tell us the pilot was a former F-35 fighter pilot with the call sign Viper, who is credited with multiple aerial victories in classified combat missions. Maya glanced at the TV, then returned to her phone call. "No, Jim, I don't need any time off. I like staying busy. The Johnson farm next week. Sure, I can handle that. Soybeans need treating before the first frost." She hung up and sat back in her chair, sipping her coffee around her. The busy terminal continued its daily rhythm, thousands of travelers hurrying to catch flights, coming home from business trips, starting vacations. None of them paid any attention to the woman in the faded jeans and work boots. 3 days later, Maya was back in Iowa flying her yellow Air Tractor AT-4 crop duster over cornfields. When her phone rang, it was Colonel Martinez, her old wing commander from the 355th Fighter Squadron. "Maya, what happened on that United flight reminded everyone why the Air Force needs pilots like you. We want you back." The Air Force made its position clear 3 years ago, Maya replied as she lined up for another spray run. "Budget constraints, changing mission requirements, excess personnel. I got the message. Like that was then. This is now, Maya. We're facing a pilot shortage crisis. Experienced combat aviators are leaving faster than we can train new ones. We need our best pilots back in the cockpit." The offer was generous. Full reinstatement at her previous rank. Command of an elite aggressor squadron at Nellis Air Force Base. Promotion to lieutenant colonel within 12 months. "I need time to think about it," Maya said. That evening, Maya sat on her front porch watching F-35s fly overhead in the distance. Her phone buzzed with a text from Lieutenant Williams, a young pilot she'd met at O'Hare. "Ma'am, I'm at Hill AFB now starting F-35 training. I hope you come back to the Air Force. We need pilots like you to train us." Maya stared at the message for a long time. Young pilots like Williams were counting on experienced aviators to pass on knowledge about combat flying and survival. The next evening, Captain Torres and First Officer Walsh from United Flight 147 drove down from Chicago to her farmhouse. "Maya," Torres said, "we needed to thank you in person. Without you, everyone on that airplane would have died. More importantly," Walsh added, "if the Air Force stops producing pilots like you, the entire aviation industry suffers. Your decision affects every future passenger who might someday need a pilot with your skills." After they left, Maya called Colonel Martinez back. Carlos, it's Maya. I have conditions. Name them. I want to train pilots, not fly a desk. I want tactical development authority, and I want guarantees that experienced pilots won't be cut in future budget crises. 2 days later, Martinez called back with good news. The Chief of Staff wants to meet you personally. You've got command of the 65th Aggressor Squadron at Nellis. Full colonel rank within 18 months and personal protection from future personnel cuts. Maya looked out at her cornfields one last time. I accept. 2 weeks later, Colonel Maya Cruz stood on the flight line at Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada, wearing a flight suit with her old call sign, Viper, embroidered on her name tag. Her new squadron of elite pilots gathered around for their first briefing. My name is Colonel Maya Cruz, call sign Viper, and I'll be your new squadron commander. A young captain asked, Ma'am, what's the most important thing we need to know? Maya thought about Flight 1-47, about Lieutenant Williams, about the cornfields of Iowa, and about all the lessons she had learned. The most important thing is that no matter what aircraft you're flying, no matter what the mission, your job is to bring everyone home. Everything else is just details. Colonel Maya Cruz, call sign Viper, was back where she belonged, and this time she was home to stay.